I mean, I've been mistaken for people quite a few times on the road. I bump into my in-laws and I try to run away in the opposite direction of most people.
Tammy, thank you very much for chatting to me. I really hope this video works, but we'll see how it goes. So basically, tell me about you. Why psychiatry?
So, sure, you could almost say I was raised to be a psychiatrist because my mom's actually a clinical psychologist.
Okay, same.
Yeah. But interestingly enough, when I was in medical school, I always remember, so I studied in Joburg. But
Okay. Cape Town original though?
I'm originally actually from Joburg.
Okay.
And then moved to Cape Town to complete like high school.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went back to Joburg to study medicine, and then I came back to Cape Town. I remember having this conversation with one of my mom's really good friends and my mom at dinner once and saying, I will never be a psychiatrist. It's not medicine, like I'll never ever do it.
Oh yeah.
I can't believe, Mom, that you work like being a psychologist. You know, if I'm gonna do medicine, I wanna be like touching people and saving lives and doing all these investigations and like doing ops.
But you always wanted to be a doctor?
I always wanted to be a doctor, yeah. But
Okay.
I actually, funnily enough, like said, I would never do psychiatry. And
Okay.
now look kind of where I am.
So that was just more like, not anti-psychiatry, but more that into kind of more surgery or medicine or something more hands-on.
Yeah, I think, when I was little, I always wanted to be a doctor, and I really just enjoyed in the beginning, like the problem-solving aspect, that idea that if you have a problem, you know what it is, you can go in and practically you can go fix it. So like the surgery, if a person has a wound that needs to be debrided, for example, or cleaned out, you know what the problem is, you can go and you can fix it, and it's quite rewarding.
Yeah.
It's kind of that idea of instant gratification, because you kind of see the instant result of what you do.
Yeah, it's rewarding to see that you fixed something.
Yeah.
Okay. And then tell me, just to go back into it, why medicine then? Where did that kind of come from?
Sure. So I think when I was younger, I always really enjoyed the component of helping like your community, helping people. I also had a brother that was quite sick when I grew up. And I think seeing a lot of how he struggled and the effect that it had on my family, a lot of why I wanted to do medicine came from there, because it came from wanting to know what it is that my brother had and how is it that I could help him. So it was a big driving factor for me to go,
Is it a younger brother?
It was an older brother.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you kind of took on that caring role with him, or it was more just kind of curious about what was going on?
I think, and it brings me back to also like going into psychiatry. I think when you're younger, you try to unpack what it is that you experience in a way that you can understand it. And sometimes the way in which we kind of unpack quite a difficult situation is to try and understand it better, so that maybe, I'm trying to find the words, but essentially it's a way that you can kind of process what happened to you. And in that situation, like if I have to think back when I was younger, I felt like quite helpless. And maybe I didn't want other families or other patients or other people to go through that experience. Like I thought if I could be a doctor, like I really just wanted to help people, and I kind of think it stemmed from me feeling quite helpless in that situation. Yeah, because it was quite hectic. Yeah.
So definitely like a shaping moment or shaping experience of your childhood. And then where did you study?
So I studied at Wits, so the university, the University of Witwatersrand, so Witsie, yay. It was really tough actually, medical school. Medical school is really tough. It's literally just getting through volumes of information. But I think what also made it quite difficult was I was quite established in Cape Town. So my husband, my boyfriend at the time, so we had to do long distance for 6 years, which was quite hectic. And then also my family, luckily my dad, because I'm originally from Joburg, but luckily my dad would travel still quite a lot between Joburg and Cape Town, but most of my family was also in Cape Town.
Okay.
And I mean, you know, when you're studying medicine, it's really a lot, and you really need support.
Yeah.
So you're really going through quite a difficult career choice, and then having like your family around helps. But I mean, I made the most of the situation, and in hindsight, like, it was really tough, but it was also a really good test for my current relationship that I'm in. I mean, my husband and I, he was my boyfriend then, are still together. So I always say if you can get through 6 years of long distance, you can pretty much get through anything.
And I mean, not even just 6 years long distance, but while you're studying as well.
Yeah.
So you don't also have time. Was that quite tough though, studying medicine and being in a relationship?
I think it has like its pros and cons. Maybe I can start off with the pros. So the pros would be that, you know, you have someone that's always going to be there to support you, to provide, you know, that emotional support, but also that like physical support, in terms of like, you know, just being your go-to person. And also just in terms of, because my husband's also not a doctor, I think it's like having that sounding board, having someone that's not always in the field, that you can just...
Bit of a break from it, actually,
Like
you can talk about non-medical things.
Exactly. So it's not... So medicine's not always like the whole focus of your day, throughout the day, and then when you come home at night. So I think being in a relationship from that perspective was very supportive, but also it kind of kept me very, very boundaried in terms of I would have time where I would work, and then I would have time when my boyfriend, who's not my husband, was in Joburg, or if I came to Cape Town, that was time that I would spend with my family, or I would spend with my boyfriend, and I wouldn't focus as much on work. So as difficult as it was, I think being in a relationship also kind of helps you to really just structure yourself and keep you balanced. I mean, some of the cons, obviously, I think maybe I would have had more of a social life, like as a medical student, if I wasn't in a relationship. But other than that, I don't think there was anything else that was really... And
obviously taught you quite good time management though, because obviously it's a lot of volume to get through.
Yeah.
To keep time for relationship stuff, you have to split your time amongst other people.
Yeah.
So I can imagine quite good time management then getting through.
Yeah, and I think like, it's also important in terms of when you look at your relationships, how you learn from that kind of experience to still remain independent, but having a willingness in times of stress and vulnerability to reach out to a person that you need support from. So I think being in a relationship and studying medicine really does have a lot more pros than cons, if I sit and think about it now.
And then psychiatry, then from being dead against it, how did you discover psychiatry and that's what you wanted to do?
Goodness. So after, actually, you know, when I was thinking about this question, because I've you get asked this question all the time. Like every time when you go for interviews to specialize, you're going to be asked this question, and then when you start to specialize, you ask this question. Kind of, there was two big things for me or three big things that changed my perspective on mental health and psychiatry. So the first being when I was in internship, and I did my internship at Karl Bremer, and I worked with Dr. Corey Schumann, who is a very well-known psychiatrist, and she kind of let the intern manage one of the psychiatric wards. So I was managing the female ward at Karl Bremer, obviously under supervision. And I really just enjoyed the experience because you were given quite a lot of independence, and it was just really fascinating. Like, one of the patients that I had was actually a lady with catatonia, but catatonia in the context of having neurosyphilis. So it was very, very interesting for me. I wanted to do a case report, and kind of just seeing how her mental health had a vast effect, not just on her, but on her generation above, so on her parents, and then also on the generation below, which is her children, because she had a child. So my interest kind of started from there. And then I did my year of ComServe I did it at Lentohia Hospital, and I worked in mostly the intellectual disability services, but in the child and adolescent psychiatry component. So it's a very, very subspecialized area in psychiatry. And that was a very difficult year. And then after that, I was like, I don't know if I really want to do psychiatry anymore. But I started doing a lot of yoga.
Okay.
And then I also worked a lot in private, like I locumed quite a bit, and I worked with my mom and my dad at a private psychiatric facility, but in the capacity of a GP.
Okay.
And the more I saw patients, the more I really just wanted to be involved collaboratively with my patients. Like I hated constantly feeling like I only had half an hour or 15 minutes to see my patients. Like I wanted to have meaningful interactions. And what really just then opened up psychiatry for me was this whole idea of, and it's something really meaningful when we go back to that reward and looking at instant gratification or just looking at the rewards that you can get from medicine. What was really an eye-opener for me was just sitting and understanding that if you are able to manage the mental health of a parent, it has an intergenerational effect. So you're affecting the parent, which could affect the child, definitely will affect the child, which will have a later effect on the next generation, so on that grandchild. And that's really beautiful, like just
breaking that generational trauma, I think.
Or just having that intergenerational effect. So you could do really meaningful and powerful work just by engaging with one person. So,
and that also ties back a little bit to kind of your childhood and how you saw that your brother's illness affected the family and affected everybody around. So it was like, very much holistic. So it does definitely tie back. Okay. And how is it going? How many more years of reg time do you have?
Sure. I think, when you specialize, you'll know, like, you get roller coaster rides and you often like, have I really chosen the right thing to do? So I'm 3 years done, so I've got 1 year left. I mean, I think with psychiatry, it's gone through quite a process. Well, I've also been a registrar, so there's been quite a few changes in terms of the actual logbook. So we have to do like a logbook, but also in terms of staffing. So for the last year, there's been massive like budget cuts and staffing cuts. So it's been difficult in that sense in terms of having resources. All in all, with anything, you go through divisions in psychiatry, same with if you do emergency medicine, the same with if you do surgery, that are really challenging and that you don't really enjoy. But on the whole, like I've really, really loved specializing in what I do. I mean, there's days where it's hard and you're working till late and you're dealing with really difficult patients. But on the whole, despite everything that's happening, there's massive opportunities to have an effect on people and to have an effect on their families, and again, that intergenerational effect. So I've really, really enjoyed it generally, despite, it being stressful, logbooks, meds, calls.
Yeah, I can imagine, A lot of people are moving overseas. Has that ever been something that you've considered, kind of working overseas once you've finished, or whether you wanted to specialize overseas, or has that never kind of crossed your mind?
I mean, I wouldn't be authentic and honest if it hadn't crossed my mind. I think it has crossed my mind. Well, it definitely has crossed my mind. Because I have 2 siblings overseas. So I have a brother that's living in Canada, and my sister recently moved to Canada as well.
Okay.
My husband's family, a lot of his extended family live in Australia.
Okay.
And I also know some psychiatrists who've moved overseas. Like quite a few of them have moved to Australia, and they really have enjoyed the move.
Yeah.
Myself personally, I mean, my husband and I are quite patriarchal. I can't say that word today. We're very much proudly South African.
Okay, good.
And you know what? Like, I think our country has such a need, you know, a need for mental health care, but a need just for people that are passionate about what they do, and a need for, just a commitment to bettering the situation. You know, I think if we all just get up and leave, what are we going to leave behind? And I absolutely just love South Africa, you know. So the only reason I would maybe leave would be if crime really got out of control, or if I was constantly living in darkness with ESCOM.
Yeah.
But other than that, I'm pretty set. Like, I mean, we also, if we think about psychiatry as well, like in terms of what I've specialized in, our laws here in South Africa are very unique.
Okay.
You know, in the sense with our Mental Health Care Act. If I'd had to go overseas, I'm probably going to have to learn a different kind of management approach. There'll be some similarities, but there's also a lot of differences.
Yeah.
And I'm just not curious enough to have to go down that route. Like, I kind of just feel like I want to finish what I'm busy doing now. And
what is your kind of approach to dealing with your mental health? And obviously burnout is quite a big thing. My background is emergency medicine, and there's tons of burnout in emergency medicine. So what is your thoughts on mental health focus for doctors themselves? And is there a lack of focus from your opinion?
You know, I think there's still a lot of stigma around mental health in general. And mental health is health. We all have physical health, spiritual health, mental health. It's just innate in who we are. And it's really important that you or any doctor just acknowledges that, you know, we're here as advocates for health, for our patients, but a part of being an advocate for your patient is also being an advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
So the biggest way that I've learned to manage my mental health, it's such a multifaceted question, but there's various components. So because I work in psychiatry, we are told from the onset, that you should be in therapy.
Okay.
Like, you're dealing with really difficult cases, and you're taking on a lot of people's trauma indirectly, and it's a really difficult field to specialize in. I mean, most people, when you tell them you're specializing in psychiatry, the answer is always like, wow, that's hectic, or that must be so interesting. So I engaged in getting a therapist really early on when I was specializing, and I think I'm not just saying that because I'm in mental health and psychiatry. I think it is such an important aspect of caring for yourself. So reaching out to someone else that is not necessarily a loved one or a friend or a colleague for that support is really, really important. And then other ways that I've kind of kept my mental health in check is making sure that I don't just get caught up in the circles that are doctors. You know, so I have a lot of friends that aren't doctors. I have a lot of things that I do outside of medicine. So, I mean, fitness is a big thing for me, and I know we're going to talk about it just now, but I love group exercise training, and not just running, you know, if it's maybe going and doing like a HIIT class or yoga, making sure that you engage in your community, not necessarily always on a physical aspect, but not just in a medical aspect is really important for keeping your mental health in check. And also, as much as possible, just keeping balanced, keeping boundaries. I think as doctors, you know, most of us go into medicine because we are empathetic. You know, we want to help. Most of us, I mean, I don't want to say A-type, but we are very much overachieving, and that's where the burnout concept comes in. And again, I'm going to come back to the point of you can't care for others unless you care for yourself. And a way that you can show care for yourself is by making sure that you adhere to your boundaries, and that you prioritize your mental, your physical, your spiritual health.
And are you able to compartmentalize? So when you're in a yoga class or a HIIT class with other people, do you kind of like put Dr. Tammy aside, or is it kind of just incorporated in who you are when you're also exercising?
So I think it's interesting. It's a very interesting question, because when the way that I see my exercise is people know I'm a doctor, but for example, when I'm in a yoga class, I can't actually have my cell phone, So it's really a time that you just shut everything out, like what people think you are, what you think you are, and you're really just forced to sit with yourself in that experience at that time. The same with group exercise. I mean, for example, I go a lot to Fit Freak. They all know I'm a doctor, but like it never comes up, you're just seen as another person that's having fun,
exercising
and trying to keep fit. And I think it's really important to take that break, to also embody this idea that you also are a human being, you also are a person, and if you want to go and have a jaw in a HIIT class and you can. It doesn't mean anything less of you. Actually, you'd be surprised, people would have probably more respect for you because they can relate to you more than anything else.
So speaking of running then, when did you discover your love of running? Because you said early on you started yoga, so when did this have you always been in school running, or is it something kind of you newly developed?
So I was always quite active in school. Like I played a lot of first team sports, but it was more like basketball, netball.
Okay, nice.
I would run. I used to sometimes run to practice and back, but I wasn't a really big runner. When I was in medical school, I would run on the treadmill, but I wouldn't really run like more than 6Ks.
Okay.
So I'd still, try and do a bit of cardio mostly. It was only really, when we're getting ready for the wedding, that I started doing other forms of movement. So then I started doing more strength training.
Okay.
But serious running, I only started taking up in COVID, so in 2020. So down the road from where I live here, I have a really good friend. Her name's Kim, and I knew her from spinning. So what I also did when I was trying to figure out who am I, or not who am I, but what do I want to do, is I became a spinning instructor.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, so I would teach like 3 times a week at Virgin Active, and I met so many people through that.
So was that again just to kind of get into exercise, or just trying to find hobbies to do?
No, so like, I had a really, so I got a running injury after, because I got married. So I got married in my second year of internship.
Okay.
And I was running obviously too much. And I got an ITB niggle, and then I had to do something else. And then I took up indoor cycling. And I met a really, really inspiring instructor. Her name's Natalie. And I just loved her, the way that she taught. But also I think working in medicine and working with patients, I think it's really important for you to be an advocate for health, but also to set an example, So I wanted to teach spinning because I just loved seeing people coming back time and time again and seeing the benefits of being active. And also I just wanted to be a good example. It's one thing for you to say to your patient, you need to go and run, or do vigorous exercise for 30 minutes a day, but then you yourself aren't doing that, So I really...
But that's quite a jump though from being active and being an advocate to actually kind of taking the spinning class. What pushed, is that kind of just generally something in your personality that you like to not so much be in control, but definitely like kind of both feet in? So what pushed you to be the instructor rather than just kind of be a participant? I think, again, it's about, it's twofold. I think firstly, I come from, when I was in school, I was always in kind of a leadership role. Okay.
So being the leader, but also in terms of, now I've lost my train of thought. What was I going to say?
Making an impact impact, or?
I think, making an impact, but also in terms of, this is what I was going to say. In terms of, that reward, I come back to that reward in terms of if you're helping someone, the reward being that if you're a good instructor or if people really enjoy your class, they keep coming back.
Yeah.
And there's that sense that in some way you're contributing to their life.
Yeah.
You're showing them that they can do it and they will do it. And you really do need people like that are going to look at maybe John Joe who keeps coming to your class and gets better with time. And it's incredibly rewarding actually being an instructor. I think until you've been an instructor, you kind of don't know. Because that sense of seeing those results and having people come up to you and say, oh, that was so awesome, I got such a sweat on, and just loving.
And did you ever get the fear that people kind of wouldn't come back or did you not factor, like, was that not a, because I can imagine like the kind of imposter syndrome I would have being an instructor. I'd be like, oh my gosh, what if they don't like my music? What if they don't come back?
You know what, I think that...
Or did you just kind of go out and enjoy it and whatever happened?
I think you know, there's that, as you say, there's that control element in you, but I always just say there's some, like anything in life, some people like what you do, other people don't, but you'll always find that balance. You'll always find, people that like you and what you do. So I wasn't really fazed. Whether there were 3 people in the class or 40, I mean, at least you're still making an influence on 3 people's lives. So.
Okay, so it seems like being an advocate for mental health, that your mental health is quite healthy yourself. Do you kind of contribute that to just growing up with the mother as a psychologist, or kind of having a therapist quite early in your career? How do you think that developed? Because it does seem you quite like that you are on a healthy spectrum.
Yeah, I think it's and I love the word that you use when you say develop. How did that develop? Mental health has been quite a journey for me. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and be like, it was always sunshine and roses. And as I've already alluded to, my childhood was quite difficult. Medical school was quite difficult. Internship was definitely difficult. So was a ComServe. I think it's just being open to processing, as you go through your different phases in life, as you go through your different stresses, just really being mindful at the time of what it is you're going through and what it is you need. So being boundary, being balanced is really, really important. And I think that's what's kept me mentally in check, is making sure that as much as possible I prioritize making time for myself. And making time for myself is me going and doing my group exercise, my yoga, my running. Prioritizing time for myself is making sure I go to therapy. Prioritizing myself is also indirectly doing things outside of medicine with people. So like my husband and I will have a date night or a date breakfast we try and do, or with friends, or with, colleagues. I don't want to say colleagues because they're also my friends, but even with my medical friends, having your running community. So just, I think with what keeps a person mentally grounded is making sure that you just are mindful of how it is you're feeling at the moment. Picking up on maybe cues that say, okay, there's this big movement in South Africa around sports psychiatry. So there's a few psychiatrists, psychologists, dietitians. We're all trying to get it recognized as a field of medicine in South Africa, because overseas it is very much recognized as a field. So Dr. James Berger actually shared the article with us, and it was after Comrades. So even with Comrades, SEPSIG, which is the sports psychiatry group that I'm on, they were involved in a drive where it was related to exactly what we're talking about, speaking about the mental health of doctors and advocating for essentially doctors being more aware of their own mental health and prioritizing it. So this article was also kind of released after that, and I thought it was a really interesting article because it was posted on this particular platform where you have professionals engaging with athletes, but also this article really just emphasized actually that if you yourself are a healthcare provider and you yourself prioritize movement, you're far more likely to advocate for it as an important component of management when it comes to your patients.
Yeah.
So overall, they found that doctors or healthcare providers who are active do actually promote a healthy lifestyle as a part of their management when it comes to patients. Yeah.
And do you think from the other side, patients also would be less likely to take it from someone that doesn't exercise, or to tell them, does it go kind of both ways? Or
yeah, I mean, I think we can assume that it does. But at the same token, I think that patients, maybe if I can say it this way, we have a huge privilege, you know, being healthcare providers. And with that privilege comes a lot of responsibility. And patients do entrust you a lot. They come to you, they want answers, they want the best. So even though a doctor that might smoke, drink, not exercise, they might give that advice, patients would probably still take it because they've come there entrusting that you know what is best.
Yeah.
But you will, I mean, I think with the advent now of technology and people being more aware of maybe what you do outside of your professional hours, they might have a different opinion if they do know you as well, and if you're telling them to do X, Y, and Z, but actually you're not doing it yourself.
Running goals, do you think that when you finish specializing that it will change, or do you think this is kind of now your lifestyle with running and then working as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think so running I'll definitely say, I mean, running is a part of what I do, but I would rather say movement is a part of my lifestyle. So for me, it's what I really, really enjoy besides, you know, my job. I enjoy it for so many reasons. Like, I enjoy it because obviously of the physical benefits, but socially, mentally, that it's just beautiful. It's something really beautiful. And once you're on that journey and once you see it as something like that, it's very hard for a person to say, actually, I can't imagine my life without it. So yeah, I mean, when I am a specialist, hopefully next year, my running's not going to stop. I mean, if anything, I'm hoping to actually incorporate more of what I do even as a specialist. So one of my big interests is sports psychiatry. So that's, I mean, what I was talking about earlier, but another big interest of mine is mindfulness and yoga. So I want to also do my yoga teacher training. Because I'm hoping to maybe one day incorporate even movement into my kind of practice and therapy that I do. Because there is mindfulness-based therapy. It is quite different. But in a sum of it, essentially, I even hope to include some of the forms of movement I do, not only on a personal level, but on a professional level as well. So I don't see my running, my yoga, my weight training going anywhere anytime soon.
How do you fit it all in?
So, I mean, someone actually asked me this question yesterday in ward rounds. I mean, how did you run comrades? You know what, my answer is quite frank. It's, you know, if something's really important to you, you always make time for it. Running is something that's really important to me. Movement is something that's really important to me, because I know that we talk about mental health and how I've managed to keep things so together. I know how important it is for my mental health. But in terms of, getting it all done, I think it really does help to just be practical, you know, to look at what you can do. So, for example, if having a running coach is something you can afford and something that you can do, I would definitely recommend that you then get a running coach. You get someone that's going to keep you accountable, or you also make sure that you are in a running community or in a supportive family that's going to support your goals. So I would never be able to run a comrades if I didn't have the support of my partner. And I think it's just about being honest in your relationship about what it is you want, what it is you want to achieve, and also just being honest in terms of saying, okay, I need maybe help in getting the goals that I want. And yeah, as much as possible, the way that I make time for all of my training is, it comes with sacrifice, obviously. Leading up to Comrades, there's often days you have to train like twice a day. I mean, weekends you're running like 4 or 5 hours at a time. The way that I made sure that I kept to my training is, I always just see it as time for me.
Okay.
You know, so you need to make time for yourself in a day. You can't, especially in our profession where, for example, if I'm working from 8 to 4 and sometimes I'm on call, there's very little time for you. So it's so important that you factor in time for self-care, and that's kind of how I see it. And that's, I mean, irrespective of if you running, like I want to run a sub 3:30 marathon, great, like that's my goal. But it's also about being realistic and practical with what's going on in your life, and just I'll come back to that element of being mindful of what's going on now.
Okay.
You know, if you're feeling completely burnt out because you're studying for exams, it's about saying, okay, hey, maybe not this year. You know, next year when I'm a specialist, cool, I'll have more time on the legs.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's having those grown-up conversations with yourself.
Are sometimes difficult to have, but they're good to have.
Or having them also with your coach and being like, yeah,
we're just being realistic this year.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so just as a wrap-up, what, if there's kind of one message that you would like to get across to anybody that's watching, or kind of the reason why you get up in the morning, what would you say that would be? It's hard to pinpoint, you've got quite a few, but if there's just one thing you kind of like, what's your message?
You know what, I think, you know, I know that this podcast is probably not going to just be listened to by doctors. I'm hoping that other people listen to it as well. But a take-home message probably would be that, I mean, I know I work in mental health, but really just making sure that you constantly are aware of what's going on with you, you know. So that means every day checking in, okay, I'm feeling really tired today, maybe I don't want to go and do like 1,000,001 hill sprints. You know, just being cognizant of what it is that you're feeling on a daily basis. So most of the times it's about waking up, doing that check-in. And the take-home message maybe that I want everyone to go away with is, it's so important that you prioritize self-care, because without caring for yourself, you really can't care for anyone else, whether that's you being a partner, whether that's you being a mother, a sister, whatever. Like, you really need to just make sure that you're looking after yourself. And it's not selfish, it's actually selfless, because you are then more able to be there for everyone else that needs you.
Give from a full cup.
Exactly.
Thank you very much for talking to me today.
It's such a pleasure. I've had such a joy.